Welcome to the Jersey Justice Podcast, featuring your hosts, attorneys Gerald Clark and Mark Morris.
Michele Siekerka, thank you for coming on today. We talked a little bit before you came in. I was kind of like nervous about this particular podcast guest and everything because, you know, as litigators, we're very like adversarial and we're always in the courtroom. I think you were saying that you used to be an attorney. Well, you still are an attorney.
Always an attorney.
Right. But you practiced as an attorney. But what I really appreciate you coming on about, and what I think is cool about the podcast today is that, you know, I'm a member of the New Jersey Association for Justice, which is, you know, it has a lobbying group, the NJPAC, I think they call it, NJBIA, and they generally lobby for what they call consumer rights and rights of individuals, and definitely against tort reform. So, you know, some people said, oh, you know, you shouldn't have her on because, you know, she represents the other side and don't give her a voice. And I just didn't agree with that at all. And I think that that's a problem today, is that it's like, oh, you're in this tribe and you're in this tribe. And we're, you know, I think there needs to be more like face-to-face discussions. And I think that if there are, I think people would find that there's more common ground or things that connect us than separate us. So I super appreciate you coming on. And we don't have Mark has a script for us today. So what are we talking about, Mark?
Just a little one. No,
All good.
basically about how you got to where you are, your background. I mean, you said once a lawyer, always a lawyer, you know, but now you're the CEO, the president of this major organization in New Jersey. And you, based on our little conversation before, you got a pretty interesting background to get there. Going from the Department of Environmental Protection to now running the New Jersey, it's the NJBIA?
New Jersey Business and Industry Association, NJBIA.
And you've been there for over 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, Jerry's right. We sit here and typically, if we're consumer side and business side, sometimes it might seem like we're on opposite ends of the spectrum, but I'm sure that's not really the case, and it's kind of a fascinating journey you've had, I think, to get to.
I mean, and let's just start with that, though, because I think it's really important that, we believe in workplace safety.
Yep.
Okay. We represent businesses who practice workplace safety, who don't want to take advantage of their clients, but want to provide the best products and services, right? So you have to start from that proposition, and you have to dispel the perception that business is a bad word, right? Because without business, you don't have jobs. People who own businesses are job creators. And without a job, we don't put the roof over our head, we don't put the food on our table, and we can't raise families and live, work, and have fun here in the state of New Jersey, right?
What do you think about? So I spend a lot of time in Puerto Rico, and what happens is, you know, there's no real border there. It's a lot harder to get to Puerto Rico. You got to come in on a ship, you know, you got to come in on a boat, and you got to try to land before ice catches you and run up the cliff and make your way into the thing. And it's very hard. And there is like a labor shortage there. Like Puerto Rico has super fertile soil, but the crops will just die because there's no one to pick them. You know, try to get someone to build a house or to cut your lawn, and it is a challenge. So what do you think about in terms of, you know, like if you snapped your fingers and sent every undocumented immigrant home tomorrow, okay? We all have to agree that the restaurants are going to close down. A lot of landscaping companies are going to go out of business. You know, you name it. So what do you guys think about that? You're the president of the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. You know, way back when George Bush, as president, tried to get comprehensive immigration reform passed, who was viewed by many as a conservative. He was a Republican. Because doesn't the country need the labor? Like, what do you think about those issues?
We absolutely need the labor.
Yeah.
Again, 110% correct. Here in New Jersey, you know, just think about all our farms.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the people who work those farms ordinarily are migrant workers. You know, they come here for a season. It's a seasonal work. They send money home. The end of the season, they go home and they come back again. All right, think about tourism and the Jersey Shore. There are thousands of HB1 visa workers and J1 workers here in the state of New Jersey. Think about high tech, a company like Cognizant, a large corporation. They 1,000 visa workers on technology because we just don't have enough of the skill set here. So they supplement the workforce, and they're an important part of the workforce. that doesn't mean that people should just be able to,
Of
break
course
laws and
not.
come in. And employers have to follow the rules too, right? We have laws around, I-9s and making sure that you can account for your workforce and otherwise. And, there are important protections that are in place, but we'd be in terrible trouble. We have a hard enough time with workforce, let alone like losing who are our migrant workers for sure.
It's funny. I never. And again, I think I'm so glad about the common ground and kind of talking to the other side, although I don't view you necessarily as the other side. Obviously, the other side on some issues like tort reform, but I don't view you or the organization as being on the other side.
I'm actually your advocate because you're a business owner.
Exactly, right. And a lot of the things that you talk about in the magazine, in the New Jersey Business and Industry Association magazine, it comes out once a month, right?
Yes.
And you always do a letter, the president, and I generally will read that each month, and there's a lot of things in there that I agree with. But I never agree with like labeling people, like calling someone an illegal alien. You're an illegal or an illegal. Because the speed limit on the parkway was 55 for many years, and no one followed that. So were they like illegal drivers at the time? But anyway, I don't.
But if you got caught, you still got the ticket, even though the 10 cars in front of you were doing the same thing, right? Yeah.
But when you say like all the employers have to follow the law too, well, that would mean, the law is you can't hire an undocumented immigrant. So if that happened, the restaurants would go out of business. Landscapers, you name it. I mean, look around. We just know from personal experience, many of the workers on residential construction projects in New Jersey are typically, or in large part, I think it's widely known, undocumented immigrants. And if you sent them all home, the construction industry in the state would collapse. But the association is more state-based and immigration is a federal thing. But do you guys have any sort of policy on that or any kind of advocacy in this area?
So again, from a workforce perspective, we speak about it from a workforce perspective and what we need here in order to ensure that we can keep our economy moving, especially in some of those industries we talked about, tourism, agriculture, correct, restaurant, hospitality falls into tourism. But again, you got it on the other side too with the highly skilled. We don't have enough highly skilled folks here too. So, we don't believe the fact that they're taking jobs away from other people. They're supplementing the workforce, where it is necessary. And yes, there are laws in place that are supposed to be followed, but we know there are many people who take landscaping, for example, right? We know I get calls at least once a week during what is the high season of going out with your landscaping, right? From the spring all the way through the fall, about folks who are out there without licenses, a guy with a lawnmower. And then I got the guy with the license who's paying and having to follow all the mandates that go along with that and pay all the money for licensing and taxes and everything else. And he feels like he's getting screwed by the guy who isn't following the rules. So we got to be careful about how we balance things, right? Because it's not fair to have a negative impact on those who are following the rules, just to let those who aren't following the rules just be off the hook either.
Do you need a license to have a landscaping company in New Jersey?
Yeah, you absolutely do.
Why? So
Because you're using pesticides.
Okay.
Yeah, DEP. DEP licensing.
Is that so?
And you need a license to run a business. And we have a lot of folks who just, again, I'm using this as an example with the lawnmower. I got a lawnmower. I'm going to go out and knock on a door, and I'm going to, just start mowing lawns, right? If you're running a business, you need to have a business license. You need to, however you incorporate yourself, S Corp, LLC, corporation, whatever that may be. Right.
But is that just so some government agency can collect fees, or is there something like beyond that?
Well,
see, now I'm getting the sense that we're on opposite sides.
No,
where
we're not. No,
you're pro licensing, and
love,
I'm pro.
But you're gonna love what I'm gonna say in a minute, okay? Because if I'm that guy with a lawnmower, and I go grab two other guys to come and work with me, if I'm not licensed and I'm not incorporated. Right?
And have insurance.
I probably don't have workers' comp insurance because in New Jersey, one employee, you must have workers' comp insurance.
Correct.
Why? To protect your worker. See, we're on the same side.
You always talk about, too, race to the bottom, how we
Yeah.
want to, prevent that and things. It seems like the same concept, essentially. If you follow the rules, you play by the rules, you enforce safety and things, ultimately it's going to cost you less in the long run than it will the guy that's kind of cutting corners and trying not to follow safety rules, because then it becomes more expensive.
It catches up to you, absolutely, 100%. I mean, again, there are certain rules that are embedded to running business to keep everyone safe, right? To protect the person running the business, to keep the workforce safe and to keep those who they are servicing or providing a product to safe.
So you think that's a good thing, what you said, just generally speaking, in terms of the licensing requirements and all that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
However, there's always a however, right? The lawyer, but
Yeah.
Depends.
in the state of New Jersey, we overregulate. Okay, we overcompensate, we over-license. We don't have good procedures in place for folks to get licenses quickly. A lot of our committees or through Department of Community Affairs and where you're supposed to get these licenses, right? You can't get them quick enough, so you're holding up people their opportunity to be employed and employ a workforce. That's very difficult. And then the mandates we put on business, we exceed the bar. So at BIA, you'll hear us say a lot of times that we're an outlier state. And what I mean by outlier, it's one thing to lead, okay? Whether it means, that you're at the high end, the good end of leading, or you're at the end, right? We always tend to be outlier. So if the norm is something like whatever we want to talk about, if the norm is 5 to 7, New Jersey tends to be like 10 or 1.
Yeah.
We don't ever seem to be in the hunt or the pack. We're always some extreme end of something.
What do you mean by being an outlier? With what? With any business regulation?
With cost of doing business, with regulations, absolutely. So you could see right now, there was a great, if you listen to 101.5, right, this morning, and there was a hearing last week on the proposed revisions to the ABC test for independent contractor, right? They couldn't get this through the legislature last year, so DOL now has decided they're just going to rewrite the rules and regulations and kind of cram it in, which I think there's a legal challenge on that we could talk about another time, okay, because we're prepared for that. But this is a great example because the only other state that goes as far as New Jersey wants to go is California. And they're having really bad repercussions for the extent of the ABC law. Basically, we're going to put
Tell us what that is, though, the ABC
Well, we're going to
law.
put gig workers out of work is what we're going to do.
What is ABC?
So
Like, what is
ABC
that?
is the test for how you decide if someone is an employee or an
independent
contractor.
Okay, got it.
And I don't want to get weedy
Can
on
I just,
this.
Can
but
I just step back for a second,
Sure.
though? So if someone is an employee, they're a direct employee, call it a W-2 employee,
Correct.
then you have to pay workers' compensation insurance, you have to pay payroll tax. There's a lot more regulations
Absolutely.
on that. If someone is an independent contractor, you can just pay them their money, don't take taxes out, get the 1099, report the 1099, and you're done with it. You don't have to worry about discrimination, law against discrimination. So how is that fitting into all what you're talking about here?
And I'll just disagree a little bit about the law against discrimination
yeah,
because
you're
that's
probably
broader
right,
than
yeah.
just employer-employee,
Correct,
right?
yeah.
No,
So
you're-
is this law to make it easier to call someone an independent contractor?
No,
It's-
no. Basically, you're putting independent contractors out of work. Think of freelance
And
writers.
and your organization wants to make it easier to call them an independent contractor.
We want to preserve a worker's right to decide to be a gig worker and work for multiple
To be an independent
employers,
contractor.
To be an
Got
independent
it.
contractor, 100%.
As personal injury lawyers, we'd be in favor of that because if they are injured on the job as W-2 employees, then we can't. It's harder to get them compensation because of something called the workers' compensation
exactly.
bar.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, go ahead. So
Yeah.
tell us about. I just want to understand.
But this
what
is an
was.
example of being of going above and beyond, right? It's important to have a test and people be properly classified for all the reasons we discussed, okay?
Yeah.
And we believe that. But when you go so far as we're going to look to go, basically you're going to put gig workers out of work. And you can talk to independent truck drivers, right, who will work for multiple companies. And when there's a spike in a season like Christmas and everything coming out of the ports, right, and they can get extra work and they decide to have their own rig for their own reasons. They don't want to be part of a big company.
Right.
You're going to put them out of work because the type of work they do can be classified, as an employee. And the burdens of getting through this from the employer side and the fact that employees can't choose the right of how they want to work is not fair for both sides.
So there's legislation pending or proposed to make it harder to call them independent contractors. Is
So
that
there was legislation that failed. It didn't get through
Okay, good.
So now-
why was that being in place? What was the purpose of that?
because DOL wants to classify more people as employees.
As a power grab?
We can debate what their intention behind this is. Some would say that some of the things you said before, right? The tax money that's accounted for, okay? Other issues. They will say it's to protect the worker.
Jersey is definitely overregulated.
See, we agree on
No,
something.
no, I'm just telling you,
You
like,
made my case.
okay, so again, I don't know why all roads lead back to Puerto Rico, but I spend a lot of time in Puerto Rico, and I surf, I go on the ocean, and there's a beach there in Aguadilla called Hobos, okay, and Hobos is like, okay, so they're drinking on the beach, they're smoking, there's dogs running around, there's people swimming everywhere, surfing, having fun, and it's pretty cool. Nothing happens, we're all good. But every once in a while, people drowned, okay? And of course, you don't need badges. Now you come to the Jersey Shore, okay, you can't drink, you can't smoke, you can't eat, you can't swim here, you have to swim there, it's just like over-regulated. But is that because it's the most densely populated state, so there's a method or reason
And does
behind
the
it?
pendulum swing at all depending on the administration, what's happening, or has it kind of always been that way?
Well, I mean, the last 7 years in terms of, business policy has been incredibly challenging under a Murphy administration, incredibly challenging. The governor, has not been the most business friendly that he could be. And so examples like we just talked about.
But didn't he make a ton of money in business on Wall Street? How does that
Yeah,
wash?
well, it's kind of, step back for a minute, and it's let's just a redo, Corzine, all right? Corzine made a ton of money on Wall Street, and he wasn't the best governor for the business community. Murphy made a ton of money on Wall Street, and he's not the best for New Jersey business. I mean, I could line up 10 companies right now, and they'll tell you stories about why Murphy policies over the last 7 years have cost them time, money, projects, opportunities, and
Is that
otherwise.
what people mean when they say like limousine liberals or something? I don't know. But I'm just not asking you, just curious if that's where that came from.
This
That
is
was Mark's
definitely
idea.
getting
not mine.
flagged for political speech no matter
Well,
what.
there's no way around it, though. I mean,
No.
we're
He was elected on a platform that was a very, very left-leaning liberal platform, right?
Yeah.
Increase minimum wage, increase paid time off, get the execution of legal cannabis going, because it was legalized during Christie, it just never got executed. And there were a host of very, very progressive
but legal cannabis
policies.
is good. I think that's a great idea.
I'm curious what's the BIA's stance on that?
Yeah.
It's funny, we're like, where do we start? And
See-
it's immigration, legalization.
when a brawl breaks out at a bar at a Jersey Shore, it's never the pot smokers, it's the drinkers. You know what I mean?
Pot smokers are too chill.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like,
Forget about it, man.
I think, and the benefits of legal cannabis, like I use the CBD, like if I have like a muscle injury or something, it's really good for anti-inflammatory properties. And I also heard that like cannabis was demonized back in the 50s
Hearst, right?
or
William Randolph Hearst.
60s
They wanted the hemp industry or something
to put it
take
out of
over.
business so
Yeah.
that the big pharma could.
Oh, I thought it was the newspaper materials or something like that.
Was it something like that? But I think legal cannabis is great. I mean,
So on the legalization, we just took a neutral position.
yeah.
We were very much involved in the workplace safety issues. And honestly, we wanted a zero tolerance.
Well, you can't smoke pot at work, just like you can't
No.
drink alcohol at work.
Yeah.
No, but the challenge for an employer would be, it's Monday morning, okay? You and I were partying together over the weekend. I like martinis, and you just said, you have CBD, okay? So, you smoke a joint, I have a
Yeah,
martini.
but you can't roll into work drunk or hungover.
Absolutely
you
not.
can't roll into work under.
But the difference will be, you
Yeah.
come in Monday morning, right? It's still in your system, and you do something goofy on what is a safety-sensitive position.
Right.
Right. You're driving the forklift
Okay.
in the manufacturing distribution center,
Yes.
and you sneezed and you knocked 3 boxes off the top of the thing. Now I'm going to test you, because our policy says if something disrupts, right, safety sensitive position, we have the right to test you. Now I find out that you have THC in your system because it stays in your system. Well, we know you're probably not high, because you probably were
right.
smart enough not to
Yeah.
smoke that morning, but it's in your system. But now you're putting the burden on this employer to understand, wow, did that happen because he's high?
Right.
Or is it really because he said he sneezed and his hand came off the thing? In a safety sensitive position,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
So now we have this goofy thing called workplace recognition experts,
Yeah.
WIRES, okay? And employers have to train somebody in the
It's almost like a
workplace.
DRE for
It is.
police. Wow.
And you know the DRE was challenged at the Supreme
Yep.
Court, okay, as being uncredible, lack of credibility.
Do you know in my first job, my first job, I worked as a, actually, no, my first job, I worked as a locker boy at North End Beach in Spring Lake. Then my second job, I worked as a locker boy at the Spring Lake Bath and Tennis Club. And I don't know if it was like $8 an hour, $9 an hour. And I did a good job, and they hit me up with a little more. And they're going to listen, don't tell anyone we're giving you a little more hourly. Okay. So I always lived by the thing my whole life. Like, you don't tell anyone what you make. But my HR person told me that we have got flagged, our ad to hire got flagged because we didn't post what the salary is. That's insane.
As of July 1st,
you have to now say what the pay range is. What's the purpose of that one?
Wage transparency.
Yeah, I remember years
and we
ago.
and we opposed this.
Did that originate in communist Russia or what?
Yeah, this was a law. I mean, this was a bill that went through the legislature. That this is another classic example of over regulation in an attempt to protect the workforce who you want to protect every day. Now see how it. Remember when I said I'm your best advocate?
Yeah.
It's funny.
Okay.
No, but Michele, I knew that before you came in today because listen, we're plaintiffs contingency lawyers. We do a lot of personal injury, construction, commercial litigation. One thing we like to do is we represent small businesses against big businesses when they get sued, but that's a whole nother thing. So we're generally in favor of that, but the labor laws are insane in New Jersey, and the law
Outlier.
against the law against discrimination is nuts. I mean, no one's in favor of discrimination, but the law against discrimination, the case law, the statutes, it's like, as an employer, it's like lose-lose. But anyway, sorry, go ahead. My friend was telling me I talk too much on my podcast, so I'm really working on that.
Don't start me on employment. I was an employment lawyer. Don't start me on employment law.
No, I remember even a few years ago, people talking in the lunchroom about their salaries. I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, don't do that. Like, no matter what you say, one person's going to be upset. Person is making more, the person is making less. Like, it's just, in my opinion, it just doesn't make sense. But I guess now you kind of have to.
And again, the justification at the time was, transparency for wage equity and otherwise. And this is basically saying, don't trust your employer because they're just out to screw you. And that's just not fair. It's just not fair.
We represent a lot of immigrant workers in construction injury cases. And, for us, it's a big plus in hiring if the person speaks Spanish or Portuguese or these different languages. And at one point, I think more than half of our clients were non-English speaking immigrant workers. So we would always look, and I remember we hired this one person, and she was hired because of her ability to speak Spanish, having been from, I think it was Ecuador, because it's not just speaking Spanish, it's understanding the culture and the whole thing. And she was probably one of the worst workers we ever had. She was terrible. And so eventually she got fired. We don't fire many people. It's very rare. And then we got sued. And guess what her allegation was why she got fired? Yeah. Because she was Hispanic and spoke Spanish. I mean, she was hired for that reason. And I think it went to the EEOC, and they found no cause, and the whole thing was thrown out. But still, it was a big pain. It was a lot of work to deal with it.
And can be a lot of money for an employer to defend those cases.
Yeah.
And they're brought too easily.
Yeah.
I think so now we'll go back, go all the way back to 1989, Lehman versus Toys R Us. Okay, this is my prior practice.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm very familiar with that case.
I mean, there you go. That's when I started picking up employment law and really studied it, back at that time. But the pendulum was like, we have to protect all the workers. It was like all the way over here. You could never get a summary judgment motion, as a defendant in those cases. And then, over time, the pendulum came back to the middle. And we recognized, well, wait a minute. The way I love to explain this to people, right? I would have, because I did both sides. I did employees and employers. I'd have an employee come in, and they would tell me a story. And the story basically was, their boss was a jerk. I mean, their boss clearly was a jerk. But my line was, your boss is a jerk, but he didn't break the law, right? Because the bullet hole of recovery is like that. You got to get right through there, right? And all these people just thought I could bring all these cases because, perfect example, because I'm a protected class, it must be. And it's like, it's more than that. So I think the pendulum swung somewhat. But again, in recent years, we have more policy. our law against discrimination isn't enough anymore in New Jersey. Now we bring all these other laws in to like kind of supplement on top, and we're like, wait a minute, we already have protections for those things. Why are you trying to like hyper protect over here?
Yeah.
What do you mean? What else are they bringing in?
Oh, I'm not going to be able to think of one now, but I was just over the last 2 years, there were 2 different bills that came up. And if I can remember after the fact, I'll get my folks to send it back to you just for your own information.
I think that the plaintiff's attorney and me just got a little excited about that too. I was like, there's more than law.
Well, it was, and I think one of them got beat down and one went through, but it's kind of like those protections are already there. And it might have had to do something maybe with pregnancy. I think it had something to do with pregnancy, and they were trying to like hyper protect something there. And we're like, wait a minute, that's already protected. Why are you like creating another? Why do you want to create another law on top of that that'll only become more confounded? So
Yeah. And do we have like, like when people get fired, they often, the first thing they do is they think of like, is there a lawsuit? And they'll call a lawyer. And my prior firm, they did a lot of, and maybe for every 20 or 30 calls, we'd maybe take one of the cases. Like, I'm not seeing in New Jersey like any sort of systemic or big problem with employment discrimination. Like, it's just kind of, I don't know. I don't see like a big problem that needs to be addressed in the state there.
I think the laws work. So I want to go back to the whole premise that, business is not a bad word.
Yeah, of
and
course not.
corporation is not a dirty word.
Well, like Mitt Romney said, businesses are people too, right?
Right.
No, well, don't go that far.
No,
that was a bad soundbite for him when he ran.
But the point is, there is this negative perception that that corporations are big bad ugly actors. The companies I work with each and every day, and the people who run those companies care deeply about their workforce. And they want to do the right thing, and they want to protect the workforce. I have companies who've had, lifelong people, 50-year career. Let's talk about, manufacturing. You want to talk about manufacturing in New Jersey?
Yeah.
You go into some of these manufacturing companies that are in third-generation family,
Yeah.
privately held.
Yeah.
The workforce has been there for 10, 20, 30, 40 years because they know how to take care of the workforce.
Yeah.
And sometimes in order to take care of your workforce, you need some flexibility to do it.
Yeah.
But then we have some of these very specific laws that come in on how you clock PTO or a family leave, or taking a sick day. And now by the 10th of an hour, you have to go and create a whole new recording system for that as an employer. That's going to cost you money, right?
Doffing and donning.
And there's a way to get to what you want to accomplish. But, we talked about that restaurant industry.
Yes.
Some of the mandates, some of the labor mandates make it almost impossible to have shift workers anymore. Yeah. I mean, it's impossible to employ a shift worker workforce and do it successfully.
What is
and
a
many
shift
of them
worker? What is that exactly?
It's people whose shifts change every week, right? So you're on a schedule. You're not a
like 9 to 5. It's different according to the needs
so
of the
think
business.
of restaurants. Like I worked in, as a kid, I worked in Burger King. I bartended in Ground Round. Remember that restaurant?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm aging myself
No,
now, right?
I remember.
But every week I get my schedule.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And one week I'm working,
And it'll
11 to
fluctuate.
7, and the
Got
next
it.
week I'm working 4 to 9.
Got it.
Okay. Well, suddenly, we think it's not fair that people can't plan their lives. And so we want to go after, shift work and make it difficult to say that there has to be more transparency in that. Now, I get it, but let's go back to the premise that employers know their workforce, and there's reasons why people choose to work at certain places.
Yeah.
And yes, are people taking advantage of it time? Absolutely. We don't speak for the bad actors, right? But you got to find a balance that an employer can employ a workforce and have flexibility. The whole idea in some of the restaurants and stuff with paid time off, it's like, oh, okay, you need these few days off this week, fine, take it, and you can make that up next week. Yeah. Now we have to replace the salary there, bring somebody in to work it's like a double cost all the time on business, and it's just too much.
It does seem.
It's just too much.
So how about the minimum wage? I mean, I always like minimum wage when I was a kid, and like, hey, I'm making $9 an hour now, whatever. What's the deal with that? I mean, does that? So I guess the two ideas is, okay, well, if you increase the minimum wage to a living wage, then you're going to trigger inflation because the business are going to have to. Okay, but then if you don't have a minimum wage, it's going to drive down, and people can't live on $12 an hour. What's the whole what's the solution to that?
Mm-hmm. Well, so today in New Jersey, our minimum wage is over $15 an hour. It's 15 and change.
And it keeps going up each year according to that. I think.
There is a statutory that goes along with cost of living and such. So. When Murphy first came in, he ran on a platform of, $15 minimum wage. And he wanted what he called a clean 15. So we came in and said, if you're going to add $5 or $7 overnight, you're going to put everybody out of business.
Right.
Okay. And so we negotiated a year times 5 years, $1 times 5 years.
Right.
Right. So slow and steady wins the race. I always say in business, right? Business needs predictability and certainty. They need to see longer term so they can make investment.
Right.
Dimmer switch. Think about when you go in a room, right?
Yeah.
Slowly on, slowly off. Flash the lights, everybody's blind.
Yeah.
Okay. So we always use that analogy because it's really important that
Could that
business
also
can
be
look
like
down the line.
boiling a frog, though?
You
know what I mean? Like if you throw the frog in the boiling pot, it's going to jump out. But if you put him in, he'll be nice and happy, and
slowly
then you
Yeah, it's another way of looking at it, So
I'm
a glass half full girl.
I was going against what
turn
you
the
said
lights.
there. But anyway, so slow
My
and
dimmer
steady.
switch puts the lights on. In any event,
Dimmer switch or boiler frog.
So this idea for business is the predictability, certainty. So anytime like we take a policy position, it's always on predictability, certainty, the ability for a business to invest long term. Right, because if you pull that switch, chances are they can't react to it.
Right.
So minimum wage, COVID blew that away. And what we had said all along is that
What do you mean COVID blew it away?
because everybody had to rush to a higher wage because of COVID, because we couldn't get the workforce back, and because the unemployment benefits were richer than what the salary was. So we had said all along, market and educational status.
Yeah.
Meaning, and by status, I mean you have to have a degree to earn money, okay? But skill building, right? Those things should dictate wages.
Right.
So an
Merit.
right? So let's go back to what was the idea of minimum wage? Entry level position, and then people earn their way up either by increasing their skills or by longevity or whatever it may be. But certain jobs, you cannot put a wage on certain jobs to make those jobs beyond what they're worth, beyond what their value is.
Yeah.
And that's been a challenge, again, in the restaurant industry, like for sure, you saw that.
Did your organization take a position on not taxing tips? I know that's a federal thing, but did you guys get involved in that at all?
We did not get involved in it, no. So 95% of what we do is state issues, and then we usually work with our congressional delegation on federal issues. Today, a little different. Because we represent a lot of, I'll go back to manufacturing again, right? With all the federal issues right now, I'm doing federal calls every other day. I sit on the board of the National Association of Manufacturers, and I'm the chair of the Conference of State Manufacturing Associations, right? The issues impacting these businesses today at the federal level are astounding with tariffs. Tariffs like leads that issue.
You talk about predictability too. Has that been very difficult?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, so you can, and we're not going to, sit here and debate Trump policy, okay? But, I have business owners who believe in the end run of where we want to get on some of those policies, but they're the unintended consequence because the execution is really challenging and is not allowing the predictability and the certainty. You can't change the cost of a product that tomorrow, especially in distribution and manufacturing, supply chain. You put one thing in a supply chain and you trigger an entire series of actions and reactions. And we can all agree that we want to bring more manufacturing back to America, and we'd love to see it come back to New Jersey because it started here, right?
Yeah.
Think of Roebling Steel and
Trenton makes the world takes, right?
Yeah, and BIA, which was then called the New Jersey Manufacturing Association, we were right there. We were right there by that bridge when Roebling Steel was on the first board of the New Jersey Manufacturing Association 115 years ago, right? So we understand industrialization. It's a really cool story, right? So we want to bring more of that back here. The reality is people left because it was priced out here. You couldn't afford to deliver the products and services here and make money, not to be rich, make money to reinvest in your company and afford your workforce. There's just, economics do mean something. And we act some days like economics don't matter, and economics matter.
When I drive on the Turnpike or maybe Route 9 and I drive, say, you go over the Driscoll Bridge and you go north and you go past Elizabeth and, Newark and those things, and you see all those burnt out factories and those beautiful buildings, and they call Newark the Brick City. Do you guys have I hate seeing when I drive through kind of a burnt out neighborhood or an old factory that's run down, Harrison, and you look, And then at the same time, they're mowing down a forest or taking someone's farm to build stuff. Does your organization have kind of a view on that in terms of how we can revitalize, whether bringing manufacturing back to those factories or turning them into, Hoboken type lofts for people to live in? Like, what's the solution to that?
Well, the solution is, home rule isn't the best thing for New Jersey. Home rule dictates that.
And that's where each town decides. If you can explain that.
Yeah. So home rule is, every municipality has its own rules. And so from municipality to municipality, the rules change. And they do their zoning and their land use at the local level. So they make those decisions. Now you have some authorities that, like the Meadowlands Commission, right? That's a big swath. You got the Pinelands Commission, that's a big swath. Like you have certain parts in the state where that's taken up one level for more comprehensive outcome. But years ago, we tried. So I served in the Christie administration. I was at the Department of Environmental Protection. And I sat on the State Planning Commission. I was the DEP rep on the State Planning Commission. And we rewrote the state plan, which was meant to be a state master plan for the future opportunities for development and redevelopment, right? We got the crap knocked out of us and couldn't go anywhere with it because we were trying to have a strategy up here that people weren't happy about down here.
Right.
And there's a whole lot of different people that weren't happy about things for different reasons, right? But the idea is, yes, let's preserve what we should preserve, but let's do responsible growth in areas around those preservation areas, right? Doesn't mean zero growth. It just means responsible growth.
Yeah.
And you can marry environment and economy together every day. That's called sustainability, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's a slippery slope, though. Like if you start to build condos in the Pine Barrens, well, now we need a road, and I feel like that development.
And you won't be able to. I mean, you won't be able to build those condos, right? But you should be able to replace an underground pipe that is already in a right-of-way, all right, to bring energy to people who need it.
Yeah.
Just an easy example.
Yeah.
Without disrupting what's going on above it with today's technology. So,
Cool.
I feel like you have a pretty interesting kind of background. I guess it's not your Department of Environmental Protection, and now you're basically business and industry. So how do those two kind of mesh? How does the environmental protection background help you in the business world and looking at all these kind of macro issues?
So let's take a step back because the business became before the environment, basically, right?
Got it.
So attorney by trade, was in private practice for just shy of 13 years. I said I was doing a lot of business and employment law, amongst other things like that insurance defense work with the one firm.
Where did you work? Was that a law firm or?
Trenton. Yeah, I was in and around Trenton.
Okay.
And I left private practice because I was offered the opportunity to work at AAA in an executive role as vice president of employee relations to take my business.
Like AAA arbitration?
No,
Or
AAA like the
the-
car and triptych people. I say triptych, I'm aging myself again, right? Okay. AAA, the Motor Club AAA, which is
Got
a
it.
federation of clubs all around the country. They're not a for-profit company. They are a not-for-profit federation of clubs across the state, and they're member services, right? So you have to be a member in order to get your toe and things like that, right? So I befriended the CEO in the smaller version of what was AAA. Back then in the region, we served on the Chamber of Commerce together, and I was doing business and employment law, and he needed somebody to do employee relations. So approached me, and I took that step out, which very funny. I'll age myself one more time. The V8 moment, right? It was January 2nd, turn of the century, 2000, and I come home. It was my twins' birthday. I have twins. Come home from a day of work, and I had a meeting with this CEO that day. And we were talking about chamber stuff. And right at the end of that meeting, he goes, "You have a few minutes, to talk." And I thought he was just going to pitch me for some free legal advice because he would do that once in a while, right? And next thing I know, he's like offering me a job. And you kind of know, like when you're having a discussion with somebody, and all of a sudden their lips are just moving, you're not hearing them anymore, and your head is already thinking like, is he like offering me a job?
Yeah,
and I'm already like, why would I ever leave private practice? Why am I even sitting here?
Yeah.
What is this discussion? And I go home, and of course I'm like to my husband, I said, ask me how my day was, And I tell him this, and he's like, well, of course you're going to do it. I'm like, well, why? And he's like, Michele, duh, you're going to be able to affect the lives of, all these people in this company from a positive perspective on their employee relations. And that's what the CEO was pitching me to. So that was my jump out of private practice to this quasi-business world where I serve now. Right? So now I'm doing employee relations in a company setting. big merger happens, and I wind up in the general counsel's office, which was great. So now I'm senior legal counsel with AAA Mid-Atlantic.
So were you doing in legal practice? Was it mainly employment law?
At that point in my career, when I left, that was the biggest part of my practice. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Before that, I had done some domestic. I did insurance defense. You know, young lawyer, you do whatever the firm throws at you. And I did veterans appeals work, which was fascinating.
Huh.
As a plaintiff's firm, you want to think about that. We can talk about that later.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Because our veterans get screwed every day. I can't
Yeah.
even tell you the stories that I saw when I was doing that. So fast forward, I'm doing that work now. I'm in general counsel's office. I'm senior legal counsel, and I have the opportunity to stay there for a long time. Right? I was on a couple succession plans and such, but they moved that. My headquarters had already moved from my backyard in Mercer County to my job was now in Philly, so I commuted to Philly every day. Now they moved the headquarters to Delaware. And my twins at that point were in 6th grade. I was on my school board. I mentioned that earlier, right? Really ingrained in my community. I'm like, I can't commute to Delaware. I need to do something else. And so I was going to go back into private practice. I had an offer from a firm. And then someone said, why don't you run the Regional Chamber of Commerce? Because you're the business advocate. So my reputation as a business advocate was kind of building.
Yeah.
So I did that for some years, ran the Mercer Regional Chamber of Commerce. And that's when we were talking earlier, we were bleeding businesses across the border over to Pennsylvania. Terrible outmigration of business into Bucks County.
Why is that?
Because of John Corzine, because of bad Democratic policy.
Wow.
And I hate to make it partisan, but it was, John Corzine Democratic policy, what was very, very anti-business. And I'll say again, born and raised Hudson County Democrat, adult Republican, branded a Christie Republican, right?
So you, I don't know if you changed parties.
Yeah, when I was younger, I did. Yeah.
You were okay. Got it.
Yeah, I lived in a municipality that was there was the new Republicans and the old Republicans. So if you wanted to play, right, you were a Republican.
Yeah.
So I switched my party.
Funny,
right?
it's like that in my town as well. You
Yeah.
kind of got to be one if you want to be
Right.
involved in any sort of politics.
Right. So just to finish my story, so Chris Christie comes on the scene, right? And he had a very pro-business agenda for New Jersey.
Yeah.
And usually a Chamber of Commerce would stay very nonpartisan, but we decided for the sake of the jobs that we were bleeding out of New Jersey that we would take up his cause and we would get involved. So I got involved in his first run for governor, served on a transition team, and then eventually that's how I wound up at DEP. So now the bonding together of the two, right? My first job at DEP is I was the red tape person there.
So to try to facilitate getting stuff through.
Correct.
Cutting through the red tape.
Responsible economic growth.
Yeah.
Right? My position started there, and then I ran water resource management, and then I was deputy commissioner for my last 2.5 years.
What time period was it when you were with the DEP?
10 to September of 14, so four and some years.
So we talked beforehand. So Hurricane Sandy hit when you
12.
were.
Yeah.
Wow. What was that time period like at the DEP?
I mean, that was crazy. So first of all, my exact position at that time, I was the assistant commissioner for water resource management when Sandy hit. Okay. So I was like New Jersey's water girl when Sandy came to town.
Yeah.
Okay. And I pretty much spent the 3 weeks post Sandy at the state emergency headquarters in Ewing, the police headquarters, from about 6 a.m. to about midnight. Really thinking, how do we get things back to where they need to be? And it was scary. I mean, I went on an infrastructure tour with one of the water companies along the shore, and it looked like a war zone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was a total war zone, and you couldn't get in unless you showed ID that you weren't a resident there, right? Like it was just an incredible war zone.
It felt like a war zone. I mean, I'm sure you remember too. You'd drive to roadblocks. You'd have to show your license to get in. It was
exactly.
Just,
Yeah.
Yeah, it got weird too when the power went out. It just got weird.
I remember seeing people kayaking in the streets and things.
Yeah. Oh, it was crazy. Yeah. Oh no, I'd come home like at midnight at night, and like there's no power or there's no anything. But it was good stories came out of that too. The rebuild, there was a lot of positive rebuilds. But it was during that time that I switched to my deputy commissioner role there, which is the number 2 person at DEP, and I oversaw a whole bunch of the rebuild programs.
Yeah.
Wow.
So all the environmental infrastructure, the dunes, those were painful. Meetings with the Army Corps of Engineers and the locals, again, home rule. And
so when Governor Christie, I guess, greeted President Obama when he landed in the helicopter with his hat in hand. I think he gave him a hug or not. I recall a lot of political blowback from that. What was that all about?
That was ridiculous.
Was that the hug was or the blowback?
The blowback. The whole thing was ridiculous.
Yeah,
we were in the middle of a tragedy.
Yeah.
Who cared that an election was the next week? Seriously, we're in the middle of a tragedy in this state.
Yeah.
And the president of the United States comes and visits and walks the shore with you and shows you empathy and says, we're going to do what we can to free up federal money for you.
Yeah.
That was just ridiculous that people, bashed Christie on that. It was ridiculous.
Oh, what? They were upset with him for being with someone from the other side?
So it was about a week before the election. Remember the timing of Sandy? It was October. It was about a week before the election that Obama showed up. Now, maybe Obama was crafty and said, hey, great time for me to go and, But I got to tell you, I was in that emergency headquarters.
Yeah.
Obama was on the phone with Christie right above my head every day for weeks, okay? So the president was being hands-on. Money came here to help us. Appropriations were made. And Governor Christie did the right thing and respected that president when he came to town 1 week before the election, and the Republicans didn't appreciate it.
Yeah. So how did Corzine drive, I mean, not to go back in time too much, but you were saying they were bleeding jobs out of the state. What was that all about?
Cost of doing business. It was this same, where we are today in the Murphy administration, in my head almost feels like a replay of some of this. It was, and I won't remember what the mandates were back then, to be honest, but it was like exponentially more expensive to run business. And what you had is right across the river, Pennsylvania was making play for our businesses.
Okay.
You go across any of the bridges across the Delaware, the other side was barren land for how long?
Yeah.
You go there now, right? It's all office parks, it's industrial. Go up to the Lehigh Valley, see all the manufacturing on the other side that we lost from here. I mean, that out-migration was real. And at BIA, we studied, when I first got here, we studied out-migration of money and of feet leaving the state. And I will tell you, we've lost today $33 billion of adjusted gross income out of the state of New Jersey over the last 15 years to out-migration. That's people walking with their wallet.
Wow. And is it cost of doing business? Is it higher taxes on the
It's
business?
all of it. It's all of it. So we're the number one taxed property state, right? We're at the top of corporate. Don't start me on corporate business tax and this thing we call a corporate transit fee last year. Talk about pulling the rug out from the business community. If you want to go there, we can. But income tax, payroll tax. I mean, I can keep going down the list. And we are always at the top end, meaning the not good end of the most expensive of that.
But we hear this every election cycle, and we hear ideas about reducing property taxes and all that. But what is the solution? Because it appears we never arrive at a solution. Like, did Governor Christie effectuate a solution? I mean, I just feel like over the years, and is this just a function of being a congested state? Like, what's the solution to all that stuff? I mean, is there any?
Just in dollars and cents, right? When Chris Christie left, our state budget was $37 billion.
Like, I remember he cut the pension, and there was a ton of blowback from cops and firefighters or whatever it was.
He reformed the pension, working in negotiations with the union.
Yeah.
Okay. The police pension's separate. It's the communication workers, those, and then the NJEA. Okay. And they reformed some of the pension. We should continue to reform pension. I mean, defined benefit plans just don't work. We had one at BIA, right? They're not sustainable on their face. This is why 401ks were created. Yeah. And frankly, next generation wants more control of their money. They really do. So that's an issue of reform. Yeah. That could save the state money. But the health benefits was reformed in negotiation with the union, right? The budget was $37 billion. Murphy's last budget that he just approved a week ago is $58 billion. It's like a 70% increase in 7 years. So that's not sustainable. Yeah. That level of spending is not sustainable. And we got bloated because during COVID, we had $6 billion of federal money come into the state, and we borrowed another $4 billion. We had $10 billion of extra money in this state that made us feel good for a few years. And we all kept talking about the fiscal cliff. What's going to happen when that money runs out?
Yeah. So what was that? Federal grants, the money, like COVID
Was it
money
like
came in?
Yeah, the
Okay,
ARPA
something
money.
separate.
It was the during COVID.
Yeah.
There was federal money. So if you recall, a whole bunch of things happening during COVID. I'll start getting PTSD.
Yeah,
but,
God, yeah.
So Sandy and then COVID.
Yeah, you should talk about COVID a little bit
Yeah.
though, because I remember I was here at our office and I was in the parking lot, and I think I was either talking to Mark or maybe my wife or something, and we were looking at each other, and I think we were like, I think we'll be okay. Like, we can work remote, but that was a crazy time. I mean, what was your experience like with that in terms of?
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this before, but the vaccines, and we got to shut everything down, and we're going to put everyone out of work, and then the government's just going to support everyone, and then we're going to start writing executive orders that say you can't go to the beach and you can't go outside and you can't go into parks, and like overnight we're a communist police state. It seemed just crazy.
It was.
And then if anyone went on social media or went on LinkedIn or something and said, are we sure these vaccines are good? Like, are we sure there's not an alternative treatment, or maybe it's just comorbidities that's killing people in the hospital, like anything like that, and they would get banned on social media and shut down. I mean, scary time,
It's incredibly scary.
And I guess it was okay because we had Democrats in charge, okay? Now you have, Trump in charge federally, and it's like, you guys did executive orders too for crazy things. So, but anyway, what was your experience with all that? I mean, it's a scary time.
It was incredibly scary
And then
time.
to look back on it and realize that it was like these vaccines and just so big, I don't know. I'm
Well, I
going
keep
off now.
saying-
So big pharma can make a lot of money, but
Well, I keep saying I want to see how history reports on COVID.
Yeah.
What the history books say, if we have history books, 20 years from now, a whole nother discussion. But
you remember that movie with Dustin Hoffman where the breakout or outbreak, whatever, and that was a movie where it was a real pandemic and people were actually dying. The movie's called Outbreak, and like there was this monkey that bit someone, and everyone got sick, and just people actually were dying, children, everyone was dying. And so it seemed like the COVID reaction we had here was to deal with something like that, but COVID turned out to not be that.
I think it depends how they were being informed and where they were being informed from, right?
Yeah.
The science, and there was a lot of different science. And so I guess a lot of it was which science are you going to choose to listen to make your policy. As a policymaker in a situation like that, I'm going to pick the most conservative science for the health and safety of my community for sure. But yet again, we can just take it too far. So, that first day, it was kind of, remember, I have a staff. I'm an employer, right? So I said to my staff, okay, everybody got a computer. We'll see you in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Log in, and we created these little protocols for the very beginning. And then all of a sudden, it was like, oh shoot,
Yeah.
like this is in 2 weeks, So from our perspective, in 24 hours, we literally became the business community's help desk. We were like, if I say like we were the lifeline, my entire staff, so I'll say at that point, we were probably 35 FTE. My entire staff was taking calls like 24/7. And we were logging these calls. What are the FAQs? And we stood up FAQs. And so people could understand what's going on. What are they doing? What can I do? What can't I do? Because these EOs were coming fast and furious. Nobody understood, am I allowed to work? Am I allowed to be out? Can my workforce do this? Are we allowed to do that? Right? The one thing in the very, very beginning, the one thing we were incredibly proud of, because we had to advocate at the same time, right? Some other states got picky and choosy on manufacturing. They were like, well, we're shutting manufacturing down except for the following types of manufacturing. In New Jersey, our advocacy kept all manufacturing open as essential business. And that was the issue, was how do you define essential business?
Yeah.
So we had to be like on top of that. 1 week into COVID, so here we are 24/7, right? And then 1 week into COVID, we stood up what still exists today is the New Jersey Business Coalition. And what we did is the coalition, it's over 100 associations and nonprofit leaders who we brought together on regular calls. We went from every day to twice a week and now we still meet every 2 weeks. We pushed out 60 policy statements during COVID, right? We wrote dozens of opening plans for businesses, right? What were best practices? We stood up a healthy workplace certification program that by CDC, if you check these 12 boxes, you're safe. And by the way, put the sticker on your business so that people know that you're following all the protocols. Right? That's the type of stuff we were doing, like serious boots on the ground. It was incredible. And I'd love to tell this one story. There were some industries that really just didn't have a voice, right? There was a big challenge for fitness gyms.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
the whole thing about can a gym be open or not, and the germs and everything, and people needed physical fitness, right?
Yeah, of course.
But it was when all the opening plans came out or started to come out, and there were all these work groups. The whole idea of recreational activities left out the whole category of like children's activities, right? So I'm a parent. I know you're a parent. I'm not sure if you're a parent. We didn't talk earlier, but
Young baby parent.
but think about all the activities that your children engage in that aren't under the definition of retail. Okay, dance school, right? Karate,
Yeah.
right? All these different types of things. So the dance studios, like there was nobody understood if they fell under the definition of retail or not. So. And they didn't have a voice. So I got 300 signatures on a letter to Governor Murphy in 24 hours from dance school owners that said, you need to let us open under the rules for retail, right?
Yeah.
Don't get dance school owners upset because these women, they're out to get you for the most part, right?
But for you looking back, was all that stuff, even in hindsight's 2020, was all that justified? Like, what do you?
No,
what?
the rules were way too. No, we were again. I understand health and safety, right?
Yeah.
The governor had this saying. It was like, economy will follow health. There was some saying he had on his thing every day, where basically, if we get the health right, the economy will come with it. And in the beginning, it was okay to be conservative, but he never pivoted
Because we didn't know exactly in the beginning.
And again, yeah, but we were feeding them a lot of information. And they were just choosing to go there. But we could have a whole lot of what people thought of why certain things happened or not. I mean, I'll tell you again, like the vaccines, okay, and showing a card that you're vaccinated, and the masking.
Yeah.
BIA again became the gatekeeper for New Jersey's business community on whether or not that was appropriate or not. And we advocated for it depends on the type of business and the workforce.
When people say that this whole crisis was being created and masking, and it's going to be a dark winter, and we're going to shut anyone down that questions vaccines or questions the severity of COVID. For the people that say that was somewhat big pharma driven to sell more shots, and it was the perfect scam for them because the shots were being paid for by the government, so they were making billions and billions. Do you have any reaction to people that say that or that kind of criticism that this was sort of like big pharma driven? Much of it.
I think sadly that.
And I know I'm assuming your organization advocates interests that are favorable to big pharma, and we have a ton of big pharma in New Jersey. But
so let me say we advocate for all business,
right,
from the corner pizzeria to the 1,000-employee call center to the biggest utilities, hospital systems, pharma, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times those interests aren't in common at a moment.
Do you think there's any merit to that idea or what people say? Or?
Well, I think what happened was the circumstances drove the situation. And for the sake of public health and what public health officials were saying, you had no choice but to say, well, we need to make people feel safe, and there's something out there, so we have to give them a vaccine to protect against it.
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, anecdotally, and she's like, these 50-year-olds, they're having heart attacks. All these people are having heart attacks, and God damn it, I know it's from that vaccine. Now, obviously, that's worth nothing scientifically, but
I would just have to say, I don't think it's, and I'm the most independent, I'm a big purple rhino, okay?
Right.
I really am. I sit in the middle of all these issues. I'm fiscally conservative and socially liberal, right? I sit right in the middle of all of this. I don't appreciate government dictating to me, right, things affecting my health care. Now, I understand
but the whole thing of that is, but Michele, if you don't wear the mask and cough,
I'm gonna hurt someone
you're going to
else.
hurt someone else.
I get, but
the masks didn't even prevent that.
But they said, but that was exactly it, right? But they said the vaccine was for you. The vaccine's not going to help somebody else. But you're going to make me get a vaccine to protect somebody else? No,
but they were saying it was going to help you because then you were no longer going to be
susceptible
contagious.
to getting it.
But then that apparently wasn't true either.
And the efficacy numbers went down and down and down.
Yeah.
As
but
time
that wasn't
progressed.
even true.
Yeah.
Like even if you had the shot and the vaccine. Anyway, we're getting off topic here. No, we're on topic. But even the shot wasn't going to, you could still be contagious. It was just all this insanity.
It was an extremely difficult time. what I didn't appreciate as someone who, leads for the business voice in New Jersey is that business was put in the position of being the uber keeper of the health of their workforce and everything that touched them as a business. I think it was overkill. I think it was inappropriate, and it was a really, really, really difficult time. And we saw too many businesses struggle and go out of business.
I was going to say, it almost seemed like the herd immunity thing? That kind of happened with businesses as well.
Terrible.
Where if
And I
you were
just-
struggling, you were...
Yeah. Well, and there was one more. I mean, there's just one more piece on this that made me incredibly nuts. All right, we're going into the summer. Things had calmed down. Summer means people are outside. Okay, people are outside, and right, the fact that we closed the beaches and the golf courses, you've got to be kidding me. I have a house down in Cape May County. Right, I couldn't walk on the beach. I had to walk like on the sidewalk. Where everybody's like, "Come on, give me a break."
You're veering if you see someone else.
But that wasn't. We were going into 4th of July weekend. We were going into the summer, and at the federal level, the state had the opportunity to extend the unemployment insurance kicker, the extra money for anybody who was on unemployment insurance. If you recall, there was state money where you could put an extra. I'm making the number up now, but it was more than $1,000 onto what our state unemployment was, so that people could have enough money to survive.
Yeah.
Whatever they were getting on that unemployment was more than they'd be getting if they were working retail during the summer at the shore, okay? We gave the governor a 10-point plan to reopen the Jersey Shore for the summer that first year. The governor chose to extend the unemployment insurance benefit, and he pretty much told New Jersey's workers, stay home for the summer. And the shore suffered significantly from it. It was a really bad move right in that moment. Really bad.
You know, it was interesting, coincidentally, around that time when we would put ads in for jobs, people would respond and then they would schedule
Ghost you.
they'd schedule an interview and then
not
ghost
show up.
us. And I'm like, what is going on? And
it was so they could certify they were looking for jobs.
and my office manager's like, it's because they're making more money on unemployment.
Exactly.
And we would see that with our staff even. People would be getting like, my friend's not working, making more money on unemployment than I am sitting at my desk.
And that's why I talked about how the market will dictate the wage, because to get the workforce back, employers had to amp up their game. And it's not just wages. You know that. You want to have a good work environment. You want to have good benefits. I mean, there's more to hiring someone than just what their wage is. Yeah. But that's why sometimes you have to have the market play. And the COVID market absolutely drove up the minimum wage. So
tell us about the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. I mean, people can look it up, but just sort of in your own words, what is it? And you've been the president for about 10 years or so?
Yep, 10 and a half years.
Is that just a CEO position? It's not like an elected thing? Like, how does that work? And how do you guys get your funding, and what's your mission, and what do you do? And then I want to ask you about kind of the current events. We're in a gubernatorial election year. You guys just put out a big policy statement. And I want to talk to you about AI and stuff too.
Sure. So
I want to talk about the FIFA World Cup.
So NJBIA, so we are a membership association. So members pay dues, companies. So companies pay dues to be a member, and you get benefits for that membership. But each and every day when we put our boots on the ground, we advocate tirelessly for an affordable and regionally competitive business climate in the state of New Jersey. We just talked about how expensive it is here, right? So number one is trying to either advance good policy for business or beat back bad policy. Last 7 years, we were beating back and mitigating bad policy. The example of the minimum wage, no clean 15, $1 a year for 5 years, that's a win for the business community, right? It's a good example of mitigating. Because it's so expensive in the state of New Jersey to run a business, we also provide products and services such as access to a health benefit program, a 401k program, because it's a secure choice. Employers at 25 have to have some type of a vehicle for a 401k, right? Robust HR and training, and then we put on events for education as well as for policy. And we have some signature events like our Women Business Leaders Forum coming up in September, which will be our 11th annual, where we host over 500 women at 2 days of amazing leadership training, hardcore leadership training, to give women the workforce skills that they need to grow up into leadership.
Let me ask you a question. So it's a women-only conference?
No. It's not.
What
Each year we have more and more men come.
Okay, good. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Because could you have a men conference? You know what I mean?
So we actually talk about next year. I think we're going to finally pivot the name to the Leadership Conference, the Leadership Forum. sponsored by, I mean, we do have a women's committee. So people ask me all the time, do we still have to have the women in the, the harsh reality is that men and women learn and do things differently at points in time, right? And sometimes having a group of men having a discussion about something, they'll converse in a certain way, and a group of women will converse in a certain way. The reality is, women are further than they have been on the spectrum of leadership in C-suite and boardroom, but I could show you the data, and that's objective. That's not just me. We're not where we should be in having more of that diverse voice around the table, right? So hardcore leadership skill building, and then visibility to the women who have it, because women mostly are more humble than men are, right? Women aren't necessarily always asking for what they really need. They'll settle more for like what's offered to them. So it's empowering them to have a broader voice, a louder voice, and then visibility to get them the jobs that they want.
So if a man said what you just said, would that be viewed as chauvinistic? You know what I mean?
I don't think so.
Like if a man said, "Oh, women never ask for what they need," or something.
No, because objectively it's true. I'm going to give you a great example.
Right.
We talked about wages and wage transparency, right? So you have an HR department. So you empower two people to have an interview at the same time for one position that you're hiring for. Let's say the position has a range of $80,000 to $120,000. Right? Door A, the woman is recruiting for position. Door B, the guy's recruiting for the position. All right? They have equal skill set. Here's what happens. The recruiter who's in there, you're like, try and see if you can get away with 100,000. We know the range, but see if you can keep it 100,000. But I'll give you leeway if you think the candidate deserves more, get it, right? So the woman's offered 100,000. She says, thank you very much. When do I start? The guy says, 100. I really need 110. And the recruiter says, oh, I can do that. I'll give you 110. He asked for it. She didn't. We need to, it's a human nature thing. And that's right there where wage disparity starts, because the woman who was sitting there, right, felt really good about being offered 100 because she knew the range was 80 to 120, so she thought she's already winning. This is real. This is true.
I don't know. It seems anecdotal to me.
It's not anecdotal.
You said you've seen studies, you got percentages and stuff.
I mean, there's data. There's data
Yeah.
out there, up the wazoo on the differences of how people approach things, right? And many times. Now, I will tell you, the next generation coming up, and this is who we're hiring today, so maybe a little bit different, and maybe we're going to catch up because of that, right? But there's a generational gap. I mean, there's definitely a generational gap. And, women my generation, I'm probably more boisterous than many who were coming up during my time. And I was not like this when I was a young lawyer and I went in. It was like, I just want the job.
Yeah.
What are you going to pay me? Right? I'm not thinking about what am I really worth? What's my value as a young woman? And sadly, young women, very long time, lack confidence. I think sports in Title IX changed that a hell of a lot. And a lot of women coming into the workplace today have sports in their backgrounds.
All right, but
and I
hold
think
on.
that changed their entire way of thinking and being.
If a guy said women lack confidence, that's just not socially acceptable, I think, for a guy to say women lack confidence.
So
It's just it seems a little bit of a double standard.
So let's talk double standard, okay? So I'm a white woman sitting in front of you,
Yeah.
okay? When we had issues during George Floyd, and I'm very close with the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey, John Harmon, who leads that, right? He and I know each other for over 30 years. And I was really sad about what I was seeing going on, right?
Oh, well, the guy was murdered on TV. It was terrible.
And I'm talking about the social movement that came
Yeah,
after
yeah.
it and behind it, and how companies were stepping up, stepping in, and then suddenly everybody was throwing money at DEI. And this is really, DEI came really at the forefront around this time, right? You sit there as a CEO and you say, okay, is this the time that my voice should have a place here, okay? White woman, what do I know? Because I'm a white woman, therefore I must have some privilege in my background. These are real psychological, real things. Yeah. So if I now want to step up and talk about what it means for the black community, am I really the poster child for that? Or someone's going to say, oh, here comes the white woman talking about the needs of the black community. Yeah. So exact same thing. You said, well, if a man said this about a woman, right? So we all have these challenges. And, right. But when you have objective, credible research and evidence out there that supports something, we all need to be a voice for it. I have a lot of men who are supporters of everything we talked about in that women coming up space, because they understand that they just not need to be a mentor, but they need to sponsor women into these roles. And they understand why, because the objective evidence shows you that there are
What do
enough
you think
of that.
about the whole DEI thing? Like with this, again, and if you don't want to answer any of this stuff,
no,
100% free.
I'm
I don't know
good.
if you're answering personally or if
No,
the
no.
industry has a position on it. But I was in an organization once, and the organization did this whole DEI initiative, and I had to go and have DEI training. I'm like, okay, I guess I will. And I went there, and there was this woman talking about how I should feel guilty because I'm a white male, and then I've said now. Meanwhile, I grew up the youngest of 13 kids. Okay, we were not well to do.
Yeah.
You know, I worked for everything or whatever, got some help educational wise, a big reason I left the organization was because I found it insulting that they would mandate that I had to go get this DEI training to learn how to suppress my institutional racist tendencies. It was insane. But anyway, what do you think about the whole DEI thing? I just like.
I've gotten quiet the past 10 minutes, by the way.
I mean, I just like can I tell you something, Michelle? Okay. Before the election, I used to watch CNN, MSNBC, click on the news. I was addicted to news. I would click 50 times a day on CNN.com, and I was insane. And I thought if Trump got elected, it would be the worst thing ever. Everything's going down, the whole 9 yards. So as I saw it was going downhill on election night, I just shut it off. And I just went cold turkey. I couldn't deal with it. I didn't want to see all the Heine dance stuff going on. And I picked up the news, and I haven't clicked on the news since. Instead, what I've done, I've said this before, and I tell people this all the time, I get the Wall Street Journal delivered. I read it on Saturday, the actual newspaper, like our parents used to do.
Right.
I don't drink coffee or smoke cigarettes, but I do the paper. And I'm so much less stressed, so much happier. And I used to be like a lot of the Trump policies actually make sense when you actually dive into them and look at them. And, like the whole thing, like I used to think, oh, he wants us out of NATO. NATO's so important. That ended World War II. And that's like what you would hear in the headlines and stuff. And then the Wall Street Journal had a 3-page spread on why the GOP is sour on NATO. And basically, we've been paying their military since World War II. The military is like the biggest line item in the federal budget. And the idea is to get them to pay more of their military. He's not turning against our allies or getting us out of NATO. He's trying to bring some fairness into the situation. So when you look at the stuff like the ending DEI through the lens of the swiping and stuff, it's like, oh, that's racist and terrible. But when you actually look at it and have a discussion, actually in this discussion, I think you're more liberal than I am. After all this. I was assuming you were going to be like this big conservative, and I'm on the other side. But sorry, you were talking about DEI.
So DEI, right? So
You're a big proponent of it. Go ahead, tell us about that.
No, I didn't say I was a big proponent of it.
I know, I'm kidding. I'm joking. Go ahead.
No, I would say, so here you go. I think DEI are 3 letters and 3 words.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good point.
That's a great point.
From a business perspective, what I say to all our businesses today is, what's your corporate culture? Is your corporate culture one of inclusivity? Do you have diversity of thought around your table, regardless of what the people look like, right? What do your customers look like? What do your customers want to see by way of who's working at your company, right? So all these things have economic impact as well, right? We go back in the whole, how this came up as a big social movement, and my frustration of being, I had the exact same experience you had. I was told I'm a privileged white woman.
Yeah.
All right. I
Yeah.
grew up in Hudson County. I
Yeah.
learned how to pronounce my R's after all these years. Okay.
Yeah.
North Bergen.
Yeah.
Okay. I grew up in Hudson County. All right. Worked my butt off.
Yeah.
Paid for my entire education.
Yeah.
All public education. First person in my family to go to college, let alone go to law school. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And be where I sit today. And someone's going to tell me I had privilege, I tell them I was born with a plastic spoon in my mouth.
Yeah.
Or I was eating with my hands.
Yeah.
So don't you tell me because of the color of my skin I'm
Yeah.
privileged, okay? However, in this exercise that I did, and it was while I was on the board of the YWCA, right? I had some moments of clarity where I could understand that maybe if I wasn't born in North Bergen as a white woman, but I was born as a black woman in Jersey City, maybe it would have been a little bit different,
Right.
but I wasn't. I still worked hard, and I think I still would have worked hard here, and I would have got what I wanted out of my hard
Michelle
work.
Obama was born as a black woman in the south side of Chicago or something, right? I mean, she didn't come from a
Right.
I think anyway.
Right. You know, and yes, my parents were divorced, and I was a latchkey kid. I mean, you want to check the boxes, okay?
Yeah.
You could check every one of them, okay? So our experience on being jaded by that type of sentiment, equal, right?
Yeah.
So now we get stuck in this whole social thing, okay, where I'm not sure that I should be talking about, you know, effects of Black America as a white woman, because people think that I'm not being authentic and genuine. So I think DEI, what happened was it was forced on companies.
Yeah.
Right? Companies had to respond because the workforce was calling for it, the customers and consumers were calling for it, society was calling for it.
Yeah.
They threw money at it. We had a whole industry grow up called the diversity officer.
Yeah.
That was an HR person who focused on diversity. For many of those executives to be out of work by their own choice in a few years because they couldn't really do what they wanted to do in some of those companies.
Yeah.
And then we had companies who really had a real culture around inclusion and diversity of thought around a table.
Yeah.
So what I say today to people is, no, so you don't call it DEI.
Right. So it's like a 4-letter word, almost 3-letter word.
It's like, what is your culture?
Yeah.
Nobody told you to change your corporate culture. If you have a good corporate culture, then you're going to be just fine. And if you had a crappy corporate culture, then having DEI meant nothing to you as a company.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
I don't think that's a liberal point of view or a conservative point of view.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And I'll just say one more thing about news. Right? I'm very, very frustrated at our inability to have good public discourse, right? We talked about this earlier. To sit and have a really good, honest debate where we can really just talk about issues as long as we're fact-informed, right? BIA, one thing we do, everything we advocate on, and we have research and data behind us. We never, ever go in unprepared. We don't make up stuff. We don't pontificate. We don't shoot from the hip. Fact and data, right? But what really bums me out is that I don't believe that there's any good objective media that's really left. So what I do in the car, because I have to, by nature of my job, listen to the news and be informed, I toggle. And every 10 minutes, I go from Fox Business to MSNBC to CNN, and I always check CNBC to get the market.
Yeah.
Right? And I just keep doing this.
Yeah. I find just reading. I find reading, like open the paper in the old way, not with a phone, and just reading, and then you think and you kind of immerse in it, and I just find that more effective.
How much time does it take you to read the paper when you sit down and do it?
Yeah, it takes like an hour or so.
Yeah,
but you don't need to know that they just dropped a bomb on Ukraine and they dropped another bomb.
Right.
Oh, and another bomb, and another 20 people got killed, and there was a mass shooting. You don't need the play-by-play of that. I don't think humans, like, we evolved to process so much stuff. Like, you know, we evolved, like, you know what's going on in your village and maybe the village next door. But to get overloaded, I think, is what's causing a lot of the insanity today.
Well, we didn't have a 24-hour
news cycle.
But you don't need it.
Decades ago.
You don't need the 24
Of course we don't,
hour.
but they got to fill the time.
Why
right?
is
now the
every
ticker going nonstop
Yeah.
to everything's breaking news?
Yeah, that annoys me too. I'm like, that's,
100%.
why do they call that breaking news? That's not breaking news.
It's not.
It makes me nuts.
So if you just read the paper on Saturday or Sunday, you're getting all that in the week, but in the distilled, like, anyway,
But the other challenge is people listen to what they want to hear. That's what's polarizing us more.
Big time. We always talk about the echo chamber effect of that. Yeah.
I mean, if you're a hardcore right-leaning person, you're listening to Fox News, and if you put on MSNBC, you're like, oh, they're liars.
Yeah.
And if you're a liberal progressive, right, you're only listening to MSNBC, and you are mortified to turn on Fox News.
Yeah.
Like, and you can't find somewhere in between.
Like, I got a magazine the other day in one of these groups, like in the business industry organization, you have your magazine, and I have another group like that I'm a member of, and they put out their magazine, and the cover of the magazine was Big Pharma's War on Women. Okay, if I hear, as soon as someone says a war on someone, you know, unless it's Russia's war on Ukraine, if it's like war on Christmas or war on, you know, this or war on children or war on schools, like, it's just a big turnoff because everything is so overdone and it's not, and it's one thing, I mean, when I read your magazine, sure, there's the advocacy, and I disagree with some of the things, but it seems to be somewhat middle of the road and more level-headed. Like it's a level-headed presentation,
So
which
I will
I
say, so
appreciate.
our award-winning New Jersey Business Magazine, right,
Yeah.
is meant to be an objective reporting on business issues.
Yeah.
So my column, right, may have policy infused in it because that's me speaking.
Yeah.
When we report, I'm incredibly proud of our editorial staff because they go out of their way to be objective and they tell two sides. And sometimes we actually have a little bit of this. It's like, well, do you really have to say that?
Yeah.
Because policy-wise, yeah, but that's okay. Well, you got to put it in there because we need to be objective, right?
So in the latest issue, you put out in your letter, there's a QR code to a policy that you put out for the governors, the two gubernatorial candidates, and you had a function where you presented that. What's that all about, and how does that come about? And how do you guys come up with the policy? I know you have your, I guess, is it fair to say you guys lobby?
We're lobbyists. I'm a registered lobbyist. Yeah.
Okay, so you have the group of lobbyists in the different areas. How is that whole policy thing put together, and how does that, and tell us about that.
Absolutely. So we do policy top down and bottom up. So what I mean by that is it could start with our thinking on something that
Can I ask you real quick? I apologize for interrupting. But when you say lobbyists, sometimes lobbyists is a four-letter word, or people have a bad view of lobbyists. Like, okay, the big oil lobbyists, and big oil is funding this, and we can go into the Citizens United opinion. That's a whole nother 9 yards, which I think is the worst U.S. Supreme Court opinion in a long time, maybe since Dred Scott. But how is your lobbying funded? Like, how are you guys funded? Are you funded by Big Pharma, or is it just the membership dues? I think you can talk about that.
Yeah. So membership dues is part of how we bring in revenue and generate revenue, right? We run campaigns that people will support at points in time.
So you'll raise money to support or oppose a bill specific, perhaps?
Yeah, it'll be more like an education campaign on what's at stake relative to that.
Okay.
Right. But again, because we're a lobbyist, because that's what it's called, right? You're a registered lobbyist. I'm a business advocate is what I much more prefer to call myself, right?
Well,
I advocate on behalf of the interests of business, yeah.
Well, is it the gambling industry or the gaming industry?
Right.
Is it drilling for oil or energy exploration?
Right, exactly. I mean, everything, right? I know, yeah. What do we call the rose by any other name, of course. So.
That all came about by, I think it was Frank Luntz in a book called Words That Work. They used to call it, for many years, they called it the death tax. Oh my God, you're going to tax me when I die? And then they switched the name to the estate tax. That sounds like a tax on rich people. We're in favor of that one.
It's crazy. And by the way, BIA led the fight for the elimination of the estate tax back during the Christie administration. That was my first couple of years there. We led the fight on that. So, and that was really important, especially to S corps, right? Because their estate is their business. And we have to do something about inheritance tax, because you still have multi-generational family-run businesses where the nephew or the niece is the one to inherit the business, and they got to pay the tax bill first on inheritance tax. And they can't. They wind up selling the business.
Yeah.
So that's really important policy.
Yeah.
Tax on the rich, tax on small business.
Yeah.
Right? So now wait, where were we?
So we were talking about
BIA,
in the latest
sure.
issue, you put out a policy thing, you had the function
And how
for
we
the
do
governor.
policy.
And how do you come up with that?
So I was saying, we do policy up, down, and bottom up. So what I mean by that is sometimes, like, because we're involved in business each and every day, and I am boots on the ground, I'm out in the community, I'm not just sitting in an office, right? Sometimes we know what business wants just by nature of institutionally, we know how things are. So sometimes we'll say, oh, wow, this is really good policy. Let's start here and let's test it. Others, it comes up through grassroots. So now we have a grassroots network called the Employer Legislative Committees. That's in just about every county around the state, right, where we partner with a local chamber of commerce. We bring our policy, we talk about it there, and then we get feedback from there, and we drive that up to the state level, right? Mm-hmm. That event we had a couple of weeks ago was a celebration of our ELC network, and it was the first public appearance of the two candidates exactly 1 week after the election. And we have done that for over 60 years. That was a time-honored tradition that the candidates present to this business community for the first time publicly.
Will you then, your organization, will it endorse a candidate?
No.
It doesn't do that?
No.
Okay.
No. So the policy document is called the Blueprint for a Competitive New Jersey.
Right.
So we've been working on this for some months. We also have policy committees. So for every area that we advocate for, we have a policy committee that gets together, and that policy committee is made up of our business members, lobbyists who may be in a vertical for a particular, like the restaurant association, right? A vertical group. So they may be on a policy committee on economic development and how it impacts their industry, right? That's how policy gets made kind of up and down. And we have a policy committee for every single issue that affects you as an employer, right? We're very, very wide and deep. And we do a ton of research. So we have a full research function. We have an affiliate research foundation called Focus New Jersey, and we do all our research there, right? So the Blueprint for Competitive New Jersey, this is a series of recommendations to make New Jersey more affordable and regionally competitive for the business community.
Yeah.
29-page document, chock full of amazing recommendations that if even 1/10 of those things were to happen, we'd be in a better state as a business community here in the state of New Jersey.
I have something totally like out of left field, totally kind of different to that. So I saw in one of the articles you wrote as well, it was a discussion about NJM, like New Jersey Manufacturers Insurance Company, and them starting to offer policies out of state and how that impacted the NJBIA. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I mentioned earlier we're about 115 years old, and we were the New Jersey Manufacturing Association, right? 5 years into our existence, we created New Jersey Manufacturers Insurance Company. And the reason why we did is because the legislature was putting through a law for employer liability. And that led to the very first business line, which was workers' comp. So these very smart businessmen, and yes, they were all men 115 years ago, said we're going to stand up our own insurance company with a workers' compensation plan to protect our interests and the interests of our workforce so that we have this insurance in place. And then the second insurance was commercial auto, was the same, same thing. So those guys with lawnmowers, first place they come when they incorporate, they came to us because we were the organization that you had to belong to have access to that insurance. That's how it was for 100 years, okay? We were the gatekeeper to that insurance product because we created it, all right? And there's a trust, basically, that said that policyholders can only be members of this association, right? And over time, that kind of meant we were kind of the marketing arm for them and et cetera. So businesses came to us to be a member, to be eligible for NJM insurance. That changed 8 years ago.
Okay. I remember my dad was a police officer, and I remember growing up, he had NJM, and when I got my license, he was like, you got to get NJM because, once you're out, you can't get back in or something along those lines.
Well, the only way an employee, so my first law firm was a member of NJBIA, and therefore the insurance was NJM. So as an employee, I had access to the policy. Once as an employee, you have the policy as an individual, it stays with you for life, okay? Even if you leave the company so the individual policies over time would stay with you. So to this day, I'm an NJM, policy holder. But 8 years ago, it changed. We split the trust because NJM was starting to underwrite insurance in other states. Clearly, they weren't going to be a BIA member to get that insurance product. And on both sides, what was happening is, our dues structure had to be such that the dues would be covered by the dividend each year to make the value proposition affordable and competitive. And no longer was that really working. So it was important for both organizations that we severed the multiple employer arrangement that we had, and that's why it's different today.
Let's take a quick break.
Sure.
About how we were talking about this off camera a minute ago about how the whole news reporting thing has changed. You can still get the newspaper, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal in hard copy. The big lawyer newspaper for years was the New Jersey Law Journal. That's now just digital print. So how is that changing, and how you keep up on the news? Like, what's the big news source now in New Jersey? Like, it comes to mind for me is NJ.com. It used to be the Star Ledger. Is that even printed? And how has that changed in the day-to-day at the State House?
Yeah, I mean, the industry keeps contracting, which is not a good thing. We were saying earlier that there used to be the press corps at the State House, and they had a room, and they would work from there all day because they were following what was going on. And today, if there's a couple of reporters hanging out, and I think the negative impact of that is you lose some of that watchdog too. Yeah. People, aren't as concerned that the camera's on them all the time about how they say things or what's going to get printed. And we just have a lack of objective media. I think it's just a shame. We were talking about that earlier. So I think it does have an impact. And I think people, again, hear what they want to hear.
Yeah. So tell us about this year, what you have going on with the gubernatorial election coming up, what kind of the policy kind of goals are and stuff, and what you see.
So we're really excited. We're really excited about these two candidates because we can work well with either of these two candidates.
So we got Citarelli and
Chittarelli and Sherrill. Yeah, Jack Chittarelli is the Republican candidate, and Mikey Sherrill is the Democratic candidate. So we were speaking about our event we had, a gubernatorial reception, just a couple weeks ago. Packed room, over 400 attendees. First time these two candidates present themselves to the business community. They sat in the room and listened to each other. Now, we've done this event for years and years, right? Usually it's a fiasco. Someone doesn't want to be in the room with the other one. This one wants to go first. You got to flip a coin. There's all these rules. It's like, you got to be kidding me, right?
Yeah.
These two sat in the room and listened to each other. They stayed on policy. They didn't talk politics at all. It was a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, after they both spoke, I made a statement and I said, well, if even 10% of anything that these two candidates talked about today happens in the next administration, this business community will be a much better place than we are today.
That's great.
And I wanted to thank the two candidates for staying on policy and leaving politics outside.
Yeah.
And then they came up and they shook hands and we took a picture together.
Okay.
And I was like, if that could be the tone and temperament of this campaign, how much could we learn and gain from that?
Yeah.
Right? Now, of course, they're beating each other up politically, and they're going to do that. But it was a beautiful night. It was just a beautiful moment to say, here's how we're kicking off this campaign, talking policy and not politics. It was really good.
And I think you'd probably get more people engaged if it were like that, because I think the shouting and the name calling is it's a big turnoff. And when you practiced law, did you get in the courtroom and stuff? And you know, as lawyers in a courtroom, we can't shout and call names to each other. We'd get in trouble, you know?
No, it's every part of institution has just gone downhill.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can get jaded really quick, and I can't stay jaded, or else I can't be good at my job. I have to have that glass half full mentality every day, no matter what is going on out there.
Yeah.
But it's not good for society, right? People are just downright like mean now.
Yes.
There's so much hate.
Yep.
People are just mean to each other. People don't know how to have an just honest, good discussion.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. We always talk too about the social media aspect of it, and just like the keyboard warriors, where it's so easy to sit there and say something negative about someone when you're not sitting face to face that you'd never say.
It's so true. And I think about, young people and bullying. And I, to give you a quick story, mentioned my twins. My twins are 33. So, but, when they were young, and they didn't even have social media then. They were teenagers. Cell phones were, they were in vogue, and texting was a thing, but group texts and chats, happened. And my daughter, one of her friends, just said something like mean about her to a group of people. And I said, Caitlin, I think we're going to call her up, and you're going to say to her, why'd you do that?
Yeah.
Right? Let's talk about that. And my daughter was mortified. She goes, I'm going to call. I said, yeah, we're going to sit down and sit right next to you, and you're going to call, and you're going to say so-and-so. Why did you say that? Why did you do that? Would you have said that if we were like on the school bus together? Yeah. You really hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
And she did it, and she felt better for doing it. I think there was a little awareness on the other side of it, you know.
Cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, we keep talking about, it's funny that I'm chomping at the bit about this one, but I was reading again one of your pieces in the magazine, kind of forecasting the FIFA World Cup coming here next summer of 2026, and kind of what you guys are doing on the BIA end to get ready for that, and what that looks like for this upcoming summer. Yeah,
so we have members of our team serving on some of the committees. And the biggest challenge, what we're trying to do for the business community, and again, I'm involved in a couple of different types of tentacles here with different groups, but really trying to make sure that our businesses in New Jersey get their fair share of the spend. It's a lot of money behind this. And unfortunately, these big sport type events and venues and the organizations that run them, their rules are so rigid, it's very difficult to maneuver them to get the best out of it that you can.
Like they can only sell one brand of like soda or something, or say beer.
They do. It's example, like they negotiate these national or international contracts that could have an impact on using the local donut maker, right? So I could have a retail store that's literally 1 mile from the stadium. They're not going to be able to sell their product in there, because there's a certain rule about what can be used when and how. And then I mentioned that there will be no vehicles allowed at all at the stadium, no cars in and out of the stadium at all. Everybody will be bussed in and out from strategic locations outside of the stadium
for
area.
Security purposes, or just logistics.
I think it's a combination of security and logistics. But I said to them, I hope you're working with the world's best logistics company and figuring this out, because I respect New Jersey Transit, but they're not pulling this off, you know.
Yeah.
So
It's funny. I forgot until we were talking before this that the Super Bowl was played here a few years ago, and I just remember the images of people like on trains trying to get there and get out.
Well, so the whole issue on any big sporting event or concert or anything is everybody arrives at different times.
Yeah.
And people come in early to party and everything else. But guess what? They all leave at the same time. And
Yeah.
that was the fiasco of the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They were not planned for, you know, those 40, 50, 60,000 bodies to all have to get on mass transportation at the same time.
So what do you think the impact on businesses in New Jersey will be from this World Cup coming here?
I hope there'll be good economic impact for the state and for the businesses in this state. I'm concerned because there's a lot of cost involved in this as well. You know, so it's going to cost the state money. So I hope we get our return on investment. I don't know that we got our return on investment in the Super Bowl. There were some studies on that afterward, and it was nice to, you know, be on the international stage. But a lot comes along with that. A lot comes along with it.
And Jerry usually ends with something like this, but if people want to get involved in the NJBIA, what can they do? How can they join? How can they donate?
Absolutely. So njbia.org. Very easy. That's our website. We're really excited. We just launched a new brand this week and our new website to go along with it. And we did a brand refresh because this is a very exciting, dynamic time right now in New Jersey and for the business community. And we do so much more than we did a long time ago to help lift up business. And so our new logo is designed in a way that shows how we lift business with the B in the middle and a nice green swoop underneath it for growth. And we infused some nice purple color that fuses our advocacy and our communications in a nonpartisan, bipartisan manner. And we're excited about where we're situated. It's a lot of opportunity for business community right now. So we're excited about that.
It's great. And yeah, again, to Jerry's point, we sat down beforehand. You'd think you're on one side of the aisle, we're on the other, and it's a lot more common ground than I think we would have thought beforehand. So, Michele, thanks a lot for your time.
It was great. I really
Awesome.
appreciate our conversation today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Michelle. Really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.